Hey, it's Two Geeks Soup. I'm John Vinalas, and we're back with Nathan Rouse is here from the Fear of God podcast. It's been a while.
It has.
Nathan, since you've been on.
I appreciate that you, we did Daredevil a few years back.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
That was a long time ago. That's crazy. It's funny. You've reached out more than once, and my life is a bit nuts, and so I'm always apologetic when it can't work out, but I'm always glad when it can, because my podcast, The Fear of God, as you mentioned, is primarily horror content related and conversations, but I will never deny I am a true here's a mix, a Marvel zombie, right? Horror and comics. This kind of stuff is in my blood to a probably embarrassing degree at this point in my almost 45 years now. And so, no, it's always fun to come hang and chat nerdy stuff and or geeky stuff, as the name of your show implies, and, and see where the conversation takes us.
Well, one of these days, and I think I mentioned this to you and Reed, at some point, if it's been a slow period and we don't have a lot else better to do, because the subject matter doesn't necessarily warrant a supreme effort, but it would be kind of a fun crossover thing between our two shows for you guys to come on and for us all to talk about New Mutants movie.
I'd still be down for that. I might be in the minority and saying, no, hear me, I don't think it's high cinema, but like, I thought it was fun. I thought it was good. I think largely it kind of, I don't know what a person might be wanting that it doesn't give them necessarily, but for what I watched it for, it more or less delivered, and from that standpoint, I kind of dug it.
That's a conversation that we can have in the future.
Yeah.
But what we are here to talk about today is the whole idea of superhero fatigue, slash, how bad has it been here in the last 3 years or so, since we got through phase 4. We're into phase 5 technically at this point. And just how bad is it? Is superhero fatigue a real thing, or are people just tired of bad superhero movies?
Are you prompting the subject matter, or are you asking the question? Do you want me to go ahead and reply?
That's kind of what we're here to talk about. Sure. And so, like, I don't know, like, let's just go. Sure. I mean, we don't need more introduction or structure than that. Yeah. I think.
I mean, I think you kind of named it, that it would be disingenuous to say it isn't a little bit of both, to quote Peter Quill, that, Marvel as a Hollywood brand, as a studio unto itself, was ascendant for a good solid decade there. And I'll frame it this way, John. We went through COVID, and then we've gone through a Marvel Phase 4. I just thank God we got Endgame and got the movie we did, and we got it in the theater. Because based on how the last few years have been from a cultural and societal standpoint, there's a world where that might not have happened as successfully as it did. So, I suppose as a preamble to the question of fatigue and or bad movies, like, I am sitting under, on my right side, a Captain America shield hung on the wall, and on my left side, really cool art that my wife got me a few years ago of Infinity War and Endgame, two films I deeply love. And here's a cynical take, that a moment has arrived. Call it fatigue, call it enough bad movies. I think the moment has arrived where, I think you'll understand the sensitivity of this comment, but like, where the capitalism of it all finally got the better of it. Like, the snake has eaten its tail, and what felt fun and growing and exciting, and we're putting the plane together as we're in the air, now feels like the plane is falling apart as it careens towards the ground because we hit a certain peak. And hear me, you didn't ask this directly, but I'm not like out. I still I've got a Marvel Unlimited subscription. I still read comics every week. Like I'm still in it. There is a degree to which the shine has started to wear off. And I'll sort of land my thoughts here, at least until the next wind sweeps into my sails. Is I'm kind of thankful for the pause. I'm kind of thankful for a moment to kind of like, okay, let's just chill out for a second. We've had a rough couple years, and there's been a few positives, but largely neutral and or some negative. I think it'll be exciting to see what Wolvie Deadpool yields, or Deadpool 3, whatever they're calling it these days. But I'm kind of thankful for a breath. Is kind of how I would kind of frame where I'm feeling these days.
Sure. Well, and so being a comic book fan does not necessarily equate to being a superhero movie fan.
Sure.
Because the comics have been chugging along. The comic book industry is its own whole crazy thing.
Right.
Right. And keeping track of who's writing this book now and which book has gotten rebooted, and
sure,
are the X-Men on the moon? Are they on Mars? Like, where are they?
Yeah, you're up to date. You're up to date. Yep.
Basically.
Yeah.
But
the problem, I'm sorry to cut you off, but the problem that you're identifying, you're scratching at here is the movies have become have morphed, evolved, grown, metastasized into a version of the comics, which is to say, I read the comics not because I'm in love with every comic I read, but because I just kind of read comics, right?
Sure.
Whereas there was a moment where the Marvel machine was so beautiful that you're like, it's not even because I read comics anymore that I'm so in love with this. I'm just kind of in love with what they're doing here.
Right.
Whereas now it's a little more, the corner has turned a little more where I'm watching it because I watch them. Yeah.
And it's become, it's this weird, like, feeding on itself, when you say the snake eating its own tail, like it's sort of been that way almost from the beginning, and very intentionally so, with the casting of Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, which was at first, proposed in the pages of the Ultimate comics. I don't know if you recall that.
Oh yeah.
The Ultimates. And they had like a whole discussion in one issue of that. It's like, when they make a movie of this, who's going to play who? And Nick Fury says, well, the only person who's going to play me is Samuel L. Jackson.
Well, I don't know if you know this bit of canonical lore. They, Brian Hitch, who did the art for that Ultimate run, they did not consult Jackson's people on doing it.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
And to the point that Jackson, being the good-natured dude he was like, okay, well, it is what it is. Just keep me in mind if this does come around, which is largely how he ended up in the actual role.
That's
a bit of a favor, because of that particular thing.
Wow, that's funny.
For you and your listeners, if you haven't read, I just in January, I'm gonna grab it real quick. Actually, you know what? It's downstairs. But a book that released late last year called MCU, and it's Joanna Robinson and a couple other authors, but it's basically an oral telling of the rise of Marvel the studio. And it's very researched. It's not expose. It's not rise and fall. It's simply, let's look at what this thing that became this juggernaut, no Marvel pun intended, was, and kind of how it got there. And if you read that book, one, it's pretty good. And you'll hear recontextualize little anecdotes you've heard along the way the last 10 years. But you really do get the impression they were making it up as it went along. And not in a cynical way, but in a just like, oh my gosh, this is working. Let's keep going. Yes, it's still working.
Yeah,
all of a sudden it's not. Yeah,
I know, and I know a little bit about that because I am the geek that I am, and I have been on this train since the very beginning. Yeah, like I know that making Iron Man was a huge gamble. Like
Sure.
basically Marvel leveraged their entire catalog of IP
Oh yeah.
to get the loan to make Iron Man.
Yep.
And you know, basically what was I forget what the investment company was. It was one of the big investment companies, would have essentially ended up owning Marvel Comics
Oh yeah.
if Iron Man had flopped.
Well, yes, and what's cool about that book is, like I said, all the little nuggets you're alluding to that you've known along the way, it puts them all in concert with each other, because like it at the same time that it's telling the story of the MCU as a Hollywood studio, it's that is adjacent to the Sony of it all with Spider-Man and
Right.
What's his face, Axel Alonso, is that his name? No, that's not who.
Yeah.
No.
The
You know who I'm talking about, but his name's eluding me at the moment.
Avi Arad?
Yes, that's what I'm looking for. So him, there's Victoria Alonso who came along much later. But you know, Avi Arad and Ike Perlmutter, whose name is in headlines sometimes these days, even if you pay attention to these types of headlines these days, what's his face, Peltz, who just kind of leveraged or made an effort to grab at Disney that didn't work out for him. But nonetheless, it's this massive winding tale of kind of how this all came to be and how just kismet it was for a number of years there, that it was just working. It's almost like, don't talk about it because it's working. If you talk about it, it's going to stop. And all of a sudden they started talking about it and it started to maybe not work so well.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, you know, you mentioned the sort of, you know, the capitalism of it all, and it's sort of a drag to have that part of the conversation, but it's kind of a necessary part of the conversation that, like, you know, these things do exist for the purpose of making money for the studios that make them. It's not just, you know, that people funsies. Are doing this for the love of the game, as it were.
Right.
And the more that it was successful, the more so yeah, definitely that's part of it. That, like, you know, these are successful, so we need to just keep doing it the way we're doing it. But also in the midst of that, there were some weird, like, gambles, like Guardians of the Galaxy,
absolutely,
right? Which was a way offbeat and not like just paint by numbers, you know, adhering to the structure of everything that had been going on up to that point. Yes. And it was huge.
But I think the point, right? I think Guardians is almost the exception to the rule from the standpoint that Guardians, it was let's just throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. But you had a director with vision. Yeah. Here's the difference between Guardians and, I'm looking at the Phase 4 list here, and let's say Eternals, or
oh my gosh, you know, can we not talk about Eternals?
Let's say Shang-Chi. Like, I just mean one-offs that are rooted not in the mainline canon. The difference between those is, if Guardians had failed, it would have met expectations, right? These days, nothing can fail because there's too much on the line. And that's
well, the problem. Sort of.
I'm just saying. But they can't be guinea pigs anymore. They have to be.
Okay. They're not permitted to fail.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
They clearly can fail. I'm saying the Guardian success story is of David turning into Goliath, not Goliath having to maintain being Goliath, right? Which is where we've kind of gotten here.
Right.
Which is not meant to be a Lawrence Fishburne reference, by the way. Goliath. Goliath.
Don't get it.
Lawrence Fishburne's character, Bill Ross, in
right, yes. Yeah.
And
Bill.
I don't remember his last name, but his first name is Bill.
Bill Foster.
There you go. Yep. Together, we got there.
That's right. I wasn't sure what you were trying to reference, but then we got there. Well, yeah, because there have been a couple of pretty major flops here in Phase 5, especially. You know, I think Phase 4 sort of coasted and I don't think anything like majorly failed in financial terms in phase 4, because people were going to see them still because it's the Marvel movie. We're going to go see it. And then there were enough kind of stinkers. I don't want to call most of the phase 4 movies actual stinkers, because the only phase 4 movie that I thought was actively bad was Eternals. And I had a whole conversation with Jeff Mitchell on an earlier episode about how I dislike Eternals. I think to this day, Eternals is still the only Marvel movie that I actively dislike.
I'm trying to find a list here. Okay.
Because
I couldn't remember what was in 4 versus 5, so I just looked up 5 here. For me, if we're referencing 4, that I'll just name it for our purposes and for listeners, it's the films: Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, Love and Thunder, Black Panther 2. I mean, I won't disagree with you that Eternals is the shakiest of all of those, but well, hot takes real quick. Hot takes meaning 3 years old at this point.
Right.
I actually am a pretty decent fan of the Black Widow film. I do think there's a world where it was a bit too little too late, but I think it's a solid kind of spy thriller.
It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. I just don't care about it because there are literally no stakes in that movie.
Sure. But even as just a piece of entertainment, it's entertaining.
It's fine. Yeah. There's nothing directly wrong with it. I don't hate it. I had a good time watching it.
I thought
I just didn't care.
Half of Shang-Chi is a lot of fun. The last kind of third I get pretty lost on. But that's maybe just me. No Way Home, is that the third Spider film? I really think he's lost. That's the Strange
No
one?
Way Home is the one with Doctor Strange. Okay. Yeah.
Clearly a box office juggernaut. Fun for what it is. You'll get a kick out of this story, John. So, Multiverse of Madness. Here is where my concern for this year enters the narrative of our conversation, which is to say, I am a respecter of the Deadpool franchise. I'm not one of the dyed-in-the-wool Deadpool heads like a lot of people are, which is to say, I can hold it a little loosely. I think the first 2 are fun. They did what they did, and they're kind of magic for what they did. But where I get a little concerned about old Deadpool Wolvie is what I'm worried Deadpool and Wolverine is being asked to do right now is what maybe a lot of us, definitely myself, thought we were getting out of Multiverse of Madness, which is this unifying sort of tale
for sure.
Of how this is all sort of, I don't need you to literally make every piece fit. I just need to kind of comprehend a little bit of what the picture is. And the funny story here is I've watched Multiverse of Madness in its entirety once. I actively did not enjoy my experience of it. However, when the film started, this is why it's funny. When the film started, the buddy I was with, because Eternals was shortly before that, Shang-Chi, like Multiverse of Madness was promoted as the unifier, right?
Right.
So as the Marvel comics pages at the top of a studio's logo are,
right. Yeah.
I looked at my buddy and I said, I'm excited.
Yeah.
And it was like the kiss of death. It was like, I did it right then. I ruined it. I created a variant where, for the next 2 hours, all I got was loud, cacophonous, everything, including the kitchen sink, a complete heel turn about face for one. Like for me personally, right now, having only seen it the one time in total, I'm not a huge Strange 2 fan, which is sad to me, but
that is sad because yeah. Anyway, but so I think basically, to sort of get back into what we were trying to talk about here, I think that Phase 4 kind of coasted on a lot of the goodwill that was really rightfully earned through phases 1 through 3, right?
Yeah,
and there wasn't anything actively offensive, in Phase 4, except I think different people found different things that to
Sure.
really start griping about, right? Like I didn't like Eternals, you didn't like Strange 2. Maybe a lot of people were very puzzled by Shang-Chi or Black Widow, and so on. And so that was sort of the beginning of the end. And in that same time period, we got on the shows. There was WandaVision, which I think was great. I loved WandaVision.
Yeah. Sure.
I liked Falcon and Winter Soldier just fine. It was.
I think
I think
its inner workings are kind of a mess, but its big points are really great. Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say there's stuff you could gripe about in Falcon and Winter Soldier, but on the whole, it's an okay package.
Sure.
In broad strokes. Loki was fabulous.
Love Loki. Yep.
Ms. Marvel.
I think the first half of Ms. Marvel is great. I think Iman Vellani is inspired casting for sure. It goes a little weird. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have kind of the same feeling about Ms. Marvel. I have the same kind of feeling about Ms. Marvel as I did about Captain Marvel, that like I feel like there's stuff about it that I don't like, but maybe it's just not for me.
Sure.
As like fair. A middle-aged white dude.
Sure.
And so I'm willing to give it some grace on that score. I'm looking forward to. I had a really great guest on to talk about Ms. Marvel, or about Captain Marvel, and I'm looking forward to having her back to talk about Ms. Marvel and Marvels as well. Yeah. Here coming up at some point in the not very distant future. So that'll be a longer conversation then. But I think there are some, and that was the same sort of thing that different people had different stuff that they didn't love about some of those projects.
Sure.
Right. And so then by the time we got through COVID and we got into phase 5 now, and the wheels are just kind of starting to come off.
Sure. Well, right? And you can't ignore. So there's the creative troubles, which is just, OMG, the monster's gotten big. We're not totally sure how to keep this thing, attached to the earth. And another one I'll point to that was a massive disappointment to me personally was Thor: Love and Thunder, because I love Ragnarok so much. But so you've got this unwieldy creative output that starts happening, and then there's the Jonathan Majors of it all, which we don't have to spend a ton of time on, but was a giant blow. I mean, that it cannot be overstated just how significantly they cashed in on him to have it utterly backfire. Right. And it's such a shame. It's such a shame. I think he's a hell of an actor, and I think it's hard to separate one's feelings on the performer from their personal experience. And I totally get they had to pivot. They could not stay cashed in there, but it is a stunning blow to kind of the plans that were
absolutely
that were meant to be a reset. It was meant to be a reset.
You can see how they're scrambling now to figure out, like, what are they going to do? It's still up in the air.
Yeah.
Aaron Welty and I had a conversation about that on the last episode. We just talked about Loki season 2. On the episode that has most recently come out. But yeah, like Quantumania, I don't know. So aside from the Jonathan Majors question, if we can sort of just bracket that off,
sure, yeah,
and think about Quantumania on its own terms, it's kind of funny because, and I'm just sort of processing this in real time actually right now. One of the weaknesses of the I would say the vast majority of the Marvel films in phase 1 through 4, heck, let's go ahead and put it all in there together. The Marvel movies as a whole have really struggled with good villains.
Sure.
And it's sort of, I know irony is not technically the right word, but colloquially we would say it's kind of ironic that this movie that has performed, abysmally,
sure,
in comparison to all the rest of them, has a far more compelling villain.
Oh yeah,
than almost all of the other movies. With notable exceptions.
Well, and what's wild about Quantumania, and this, I'll occasionally, as it organically comes up, point back to that MCU book. Like, what's wild about Quantumania and about the moment period is creatively, kind of studio wise, they thought Quantumania was solid and going to be a hit. And so it's wild to see just how even off their own sort of barometer had become for
right.
kind of where, maybe anecdotally where fans are, quote unquote, or maybe where the market is, or blah, blah, blah. All these things that had just kind of gotten out of control because you also have in phase 5, as I'm staring at this list, you also got Guardians 3, which is pretty great, largely, but again, is the subject of a director's vision, a culminating entry, and that kind of arc was permitted to be what he wanted it to be. So it had a lot of different ingredients in the mix that were less about, even though they were part of it, were less about brand management and more about directorial sort of vision.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, it's been such a mixed bag, which is just kind of hard for fans like yours truly to kind of wrestle down.
For sure. So let's step away from the MCU for a minute,
okay,
and talk about the DC movies that we've had. And DC kind of has always sort of limped along,
sure,
with this stuff, at least critically speaking, right? Because most of those movies made buckets and buckets and oodles of money, right? Even the ones that many people think are terrible,
money was
Batman
made
versus Superman,
money was made, for sure,
but in the forefront there. And the Justice League was a mess, and I don't know, where are you on Wonder Woman 84?
Well, speaking a little more broadly, we, on our show, on one of our kind of B-sides, which is where we tackle non-horror stuff, we did do the Zack Snyder Justice League. Any long-time listener of our show will know I'm pretty generally out on the Snyderverse of the DC stuff, even though, let the record state, like, I can respect it. I don't really appreciate it, but I can respect it as, okay, it's a director's vision, even if I don't even share an approximation.
I think Zack Snyder's pretty overrated as a director, but
well, it's your show, so I don't want to step on toes here, but yes, I will fully agree with you there. But so I'm pretty out on those, was kind of from Man of Steel.
I am not in on the Snyderverse at all.
This is why,
do you remember there was the trend on Twitter or Facebook or whatever? It was that if you're kidnapped, what's the tweet that you're going to send out to let people know that you're in distress? And mine is like, on further consideration, I think the DCEU is really worthy of some thought and appreciation.
Yes, that would be, like, yes. People who know my cultural taste, my pop cultural taste, that would be mine as well. They're like, Nathan is in trouble. He is sending help. But he's referencing Zack Snyder's Superman, and help will not come from there. But so as far as the Wonder Woman stuff goes, I think what the DCEU got right, truly, was its casting. Expert casting, fantastic casting, more or less across the board.
maybe with some notable exceptions, but yeah, sure.
But in terms of the biggies, right? So
Yeah.
I think Cavill is great as what was supposed to be Superman. Affleck, Gadot. See, I can even throw shade, even when I'm not trying. I liked. I'm getting back to your question of Wonder Woman 84. Remember that Wonder Woman 84 came out as part of Warner Brothers' COVID highly criticized push to throw all of their content that year onto HBO Max, right? Because of COVID.
Oh, I forgot that.
So I did watch it at home, and there's something about that the at-home experience that will lower your sort of expectation bar. I haven't rewatched it, but I found myself really enthralled with the themes of Wonder Woman 84.
Yeah.
And largely the general kind of story, even if, you know, I can recognize, having only seen it the one time, that it's pretty wobbly in terms of execution and pace, but I loved its themes.
Yeah, I'm totally there with you. And I want to have a whole conversation about Wonder Woman 84 with somebody at some point. But I think that I think that Wonder Woman is sort of the best thing in the entire DCEU.
For sure. Yep.
Like she just makes every scene that she's in, like you wish you were watching a whole Wonder Woman movie.
Yeah.
Like for me, I mean, anytime she shows up.
Yes.
Because
and they know it too, because they throw her in everything. You know, like they knew what they had.
Yeah. I just watched last week Shazam Fury of the Gods.
Yeah.
Sure. Honestly, I didn't hate it.
Sure, it's fine.
Like it's fine. It's inoffensive. and
I would say more it's fine than inoffensive. Yes, because it sort of starts to tip over into offensive with how, I mean, come on, you're not picking on this, but I will. It's the in-text final scene when he comes back. It is so like green screen. Literally nobody's in a scene together at the end there. I was like, come on, y'all, this is so stupid. But anyway, that's me grousing.
No, Wonder Woman is the best thing in the DCEU because she actually is what the character is supposed to be.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like there's the earnestness, there's the compassion, there's
ferocity.
You know, all of the you know, and also she's a kick-ass, superheroine.
Sure.
At the same time, like, and so, they got Wonder Woman right to like the exactly inverse degree. They got Superman wrong.
Yeah. Well, and we don't have to dwell here long, but to me, one of the greatest tragedies of, and this is to those who aren't geeks, this would seem,
none of those people are listening to the show. It doesn't matter.
But to the normies in the world, this would seem hyperbolic. But to someone like me who takes this stuff more seriously than the average person, I think one of the great tragedies of pop culture of the last decade, that's a big lead in here, is the treatment of Superman and the fact that Cavill, I love Cavill. I think Cavill,
he's great,
is a perfect cast Superman who never got to play Superman.
It's not his fault.
No,
100%. It's not his fault.
And I think it's so tragic that that those who might have had Snyderverse as their entry into mythic superhero storytelling, this is who they have as Superman, because it's so anathema to the heart of that character. And I think that's so sad, and why 100%. I'm kind of looking forward at least to let's wipe the slate clean, let Gunn do what he's going to do. He's prone to sentiment, which I'm okay with if you're doing Superman, but anyway.
Superman should be sentimental. Like that's the correct way to do Superman. Like, and I've said this before on this show like multiple times. Like, mopey emo Superman is not a crime against humanity, but almost.
Well, to me, it's almost less like. To me, mopey emo aspect of it is second. This is me. This is my high horse. This is the high horse I never fail to jump onto.
No, don't worry about it.
It's murderer Superman. I hate it. Can't stand it.
Sure.
Just not the minute it happened, I was like, holy cow, I'm out. Way back when. And the amount of stupid, I'm 44 years old. That movie came out 10 years ago at this point. Like the amount of stupid, inane conversations I let myself get roped into, both online and in the real, about that dumb movie, gave it far too much air and thought. But because I just couldn't, I personally couldn't comprehend that we were kind of permissive of, like, no, it's fine. Yeah. It's postmodern Superman. Yeah. It's like, well, no.
Well, anyway. and that all stems from the total mistake of having Zack Snyder in charge of the whole thing in the first place, because he's on record as not understanding why people like Superman, and it shows.
Yeah. But anyway, that's a
So point. Anyway, that was like a weird foray out into like gripes of way earlier movies, which is fine. Like that's kind of what this is here for, is like it doesn't matter. So then, like, superhero fatigue based on the DC end of things, like it's kind of always been bad on the DC end of things.
Yeah.
And it's been especially bad recently. And I don't know where you are on the Aquaman movies. I'm just, I don't like them. I haven't seen
either of them.
You haven't seen? Okay, well, fine. Yeah, that's kind of that's pretty telling.
Sure.
All on its own. For me, the first one was so boring that I literally stopped watching it halfway through.
Wow.
And didn't come back to it for like years.
Well, I was so far out by that point on the DCEU that even with the accolades of James Wan, whom I generally speaking enjoy, and no, really, it's pretty good. We're pushing up against my general weariness on DCEU and the runtime, because I think that first one's like 2 hours plus. I'm like, I'm never gonna sit down and watch this, so I just never have. And then
I have the Regal Unlimited, the theater chain, thing, and so I went to see Aquaman 2 just because why not?
Sure.
And it wasn't any better than the first one for me. Like like Jason Momoa is just kind of like a big dumb lug,
right?
And sometimes that's fine,
right?
But sure. Aquaman should be a character with gravitas, at least on par with
should he, John? Should he?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he should, because like the Super Friends Aquaman is not real Aquaman.
Okay,
like that's
okay.
Sure. Like, and it's not fair that Aquaman has been like the butt of every superhero joke for the last 40 years, sure. because his source material is genuinely better than that.
I do feel the need to support your sponsored content here when you're referencing Regal Unlimited, and share a brief anecdote, which is I was in the Regal Unlimited camp pre-COVID, and John, one of the greatest, like, this is why I say we're never going to get, or thank God we got the Endgame we got, is in the couple weeks following the release of Endgame, because I was a Regal Unlimited person, dude.
Did you watch it like 8 times?
No.
Oh.
My job is pretty weird to the average person. Like, I might have a 10 o'clock appointment one day and a 4 o'clock appointment that same day. The next day I might have a noon appointment. It's just all over the map in terms of time. But what would happen is I would have these pockets
coming. I know what's happening.
I would have these pockets of time where it's like, I've got an hour. How close am I to a Regal? I'd already seen Endgame a couple times in total. I would go and just sit there and watch like 20 minutes at a time, just to get the taste of it. Like, this is
so great.
It was so
That's
beautiful.
Amazing.
It was a beautiful moment.
for that one shining moment.
Oh yeah.
Yes. No. So
Aquaman, he's awesome.
Yeah, like, those movies are not good. Like, The Flash was actively offensive to me on multiple
You know what's sad
levels.
about The Flash is I try to be a gracious human being. I come on here and I sharpen my axes against the lesser comic book properties because it's good radio. But I do, in just general life, try to be a very compassionate, open-hearted human being.
Right.
When the Flash was coming around, despite my DCEU distaste, despite my what's his face Ezra Miller distaste, despite my sort of like Andy Muschietti at chapter 1, really dislike Andy Muschietti at chapter 2. Despite all these things, I was open because I love me some Keaton Batman. I love, kind of what they were at least marketing this as. I was ready. I was ready to go. And then, dude, the review started coming in. I was like, I don't have time for that. No, I'm not going to go sit through that.
No,
like,
I'm glad that you spared yourself the experience because it was so bad. Like I didn't have a good time.
Ugh.
Like I did not enjoy the experience of watching this thing in the theater. Like even having Michael Keaton there as Batman didn't save it because it was just him like kind of delivering, the lines.
Right.
That everybody loved from the original Batman movie. And it was so soulless.
Yeah.
And like, and I use that term advisedly because like it lost me at the very beginning. And I'm sure you've heard about like the sequence where he's like saving the babies from the hospital. Like as a dad, like that was actually offensive and repellent to me that like we're using the peril of these like CGI babies as a joke.
Yeah.
And like the way that we save one of them is by throwing it in a microwave. Like, no, I am out. Like this is bad.
Yeah. Well, and you just made a note, not even minding the babies of it all, but this is where both MCU and DC and just general blockbuster storytelling on the big screen has gotten to everyone's equal offenders here. Is the really bad CGI of it all. And I'm going to throw an insertion that is non-comic themed, but it is genre themed here for at least a moment. I am not a Dune head. I never read them. Never even saw the original David Lynch stuff. But I'm a Villeneuve fan. I'm a movie fan. I like going to the movies. I like being entertained. I like being enthralled. And I'll frame it this way. The first Dune I've seen 3 times now, I think. When I saw it the first time, I was kind of scratching my head most of the time. I didn't get it.
Right. It's heavy. Yeah.
Yes.
You got to get your head around a lot.
But it intrigued me. It intrigued me enough to not like dismiss it. I was like, okay, I don't really, I don't get it yet. But flash forward a few weeks or around about the time it came out for home release, I showed it to my kids just to like show them their big Chalamet, Zendaya heads and Florence Pugh ultimately. So they were going to be appealed to it. And on that viewing, I was like, okay, I'm starting to wrap my head around what's kind of happening here. And it was by the time I got to the third viewing, which I think is in advance of Dune 2, where I was like, I'm on board. I don't even get it all, but I'm on board. I'm ready for this. I'm excited. John, watching Dune 2 in the theater was chill inducing. And it was
amazing. And it was so good.
It was such and I say this as an absolute lover of 80%, maybe 75% these days of the MCU and general comic book storytelling and genre storytelling. Watching that movie, I was like, holy crap, this is such an indictment of kind of the entire state of blockbuster movie making right now. Like, it's beautiful. It is practical. Everything looks like it actually is existing in relationship to everything else on the screen with it. It was mesmerizing. I keep wanting to get back and I haven't been able to, but
I was a guest on another podcast and we had a whole conversation about Dune 2. And the thing that I mentioned there was walking out of that theater. The thing that like struck me first was like, I believed every frame of that movie. Like there was nothing in that movie that challenged my suspension of disbelief even for a minute. Like, and I was watching for it. Like when the guys, there was the big attack at the beginning when the Sardaukar were like floating up to the thing, and I was watching them because I know how people in flying rigs look when they fly, and how you get that weird, like your body moves a weird way when you're suspended from a wire most of the time.
Right.
and I was watching them to see if they were gonna look that way, and they didn't, and it was awesome.
I mean, that first 5 minutes, the scene you're referring to, I went slack-jawed and was kind of that way for the next 2 hours. And again, we don't have to linger here overly long because the main conversation point isn't Dune, but when you talk about, ask the question of fatigue, this is what I mean by quote unquote capitalism. I'm not trying to be this hyper cynical, everything shouldn't have any component of let's make some money attached to it. I am saying we got so good at appearing to do so much with so little that we forgot to actually deliver on visual tapestry, kind of radiant visual story.
So today, this evening, I watched for the very first time the 1996 Dennis Quaid movie Dragonheart.
Okay, yeah.
Have you ever seen
Sean
it?
Connery voices the dragon. Is that right?
Sean Connery voices the dragon. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's been
not recently.
No.
1996. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but you haven't seen it recently at all, right?
Correct. I saw it in 96, not since.
In 96, yeah.
Yes,
okay. Yes. So you know what's funny about that movie? Seeing it in 2024, that dragon doesn't look bad at all.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty solid. Like, some of the effects, like,
sure,
it shows its age for sure in some ways. But I was looking hard at the dragon, like, on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it's not Jurassic Park level.
Right.
But it's better. It's way better than the CGI babies in The Flash.
Yeah. Well, you just tipped your hat towards it. My oldest kid is 15, and for her birthday in August, we went to see Barbie for a third time. And at the theater, this is what I meant a minute ago when I just said I just love movies. I love going to the movies. Mm-hmm. I love that experience. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of a version of church to me. And as she's parting ways with some of the buddies we gathered to watch Barbie, Jurassic Park 30th anniversary was playing that weekend. And we're standing there in the theater, and her name's Lucy. And I was like, hey, Lucy, you want to go back in and just like watch Jurassic Park on the big screen? So we went in, John. There was like 5 of us in there, and it looked as good as it did since 1994. It looked so good. It's so fun. They still jumped like they did in 94. And to your point, like, I don't understand enough how things literally get made in CGI sometimes, but I do know Spielberg was doing something different than even George Lucas, his immediate peer at the time, was doing, because 30 years on, Jurassic Park looks about as good as anything current. It holds up. Anyway, that's a diatribe about CGI, but it matters.
No, and just since we talked about Jurassic Park, I love to tell this story. I saw Jurassic Park in the theaters, and it's one of my most hilarious theater experiences ever. When Sattler is done resetting the power, and she's running away from the raptor in the power bunker.
Sure, yeah.
And she runs out, and she closes the gate, and she kind of sags against it.
Yep.
And from behind me, somebody yells, "Don't just stand there, run!"
That's hilarious.
Because they were so into it, and like
it works.
And I, there was never, the only other moment of like total audience buy-in that I've experienced on that sort of level since then was, watching Endgame when Cap summoned Mjolnir.
Oh my God.
Right.
I wish someone had filmed me during that moment, because I
remember the story from when we did the Endgame episode.
Nothing could do justice to even trying to tell that story. Like, I will, in Inside Out, they talk about core memories, right? Like, that is a core memory. I hope 50 years from now, if I'm still here and not assimilated into the Borg, I will remember the experience of watching Steve Rogers on the big screen be the one to pick up Mjolnir and hurl it. It's yes, it is
fabulous.
It is fabulous.
So there you go. Yeah, honestly, I've got several Cap T-shirts too.
Yeah,
So
yeah, he's the best.
I'm right there. I'm right there with you. And I think being as wrong as I was um about Chris Evans' suitability for the role
Sure,
made me stop doubting the casting
sure.
coming out of Marvel, because I had the same doubts about Robert Downey Jr. and I've said this probably multiple times on the show before. Is like, are you kidding me? Like the clown from Heart and Souls,
That's funny.
like that's going to be our Tony Stark? Like no.
And yet,
And like Chris Evans, like he was okay as Johnny Storm, but
he's
how
too
is he
good.
how is he going to have the gravitas to be Steve Rogers?
And yet he does.
And yet he
I
does.
thought this a
Like,
few minutes ago, and it's worth mentioning here as you're talking through casting, is as the fork in the road has been pretty defined between, kind of pre-phase 5 or whatever we're calling this moment in time for Marvel's movie output, it can't be overstated the value, not just of their savviness at casting, but in a literal specific sense these days, of Tom Hiddleston. Dude, he is legit.
yeah.
Incredible delivery across 2 seasons of Loki. I don't imagine we won't see him again. That was a double negative there. I imagine at some point Hiddleston's going to show back up. Like, he is to me right now, he is kind of, even though, again, question marks around his future involvement, he kind of became for MCU what a bit Hugh Jackman kind of became for X-Men U. Just
Sure.
that kind of
Yeah.
like utility player that kind of came out of nowhere. And, hey, I love Downey Jr. I think Evans is fantastic, but no one would have thought Hiddleston's the one who's going to carry the torch all the way past the end,
So Aaron Welty and I talked about Loki season 2 in the previous episode, and anytime any of my guests and I talk about anything that Tom Hiddleston is involved with, we reliably wax rhapsodic
Sure.
about
he's so good
about his excellence. Yeah, because he's just great. I saw an announcement, I think it was today or yesterday. They're going to do a live action Hercules, and he's going to play Hades.
Huh. Oh,
which might
of the film of the Disney Hercules.
Yeah.
I was on MCU brain. Okay.
Which might be enough to make me watch one of those, because mostly I've avoided them because I know they're pretty terrible.
Yeah.
But Tom Hiddleston as Hades
see above
might
CGI conversation.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. So Phase 5 has been bad. DCEU has sort of just been generally not great. I think I actually want to reverse those.
Sure.
Phase 5 has been not great. DCEU has been generally bad. And so I think we're kind of coming back around to where, where we started here. It's mainly, I don't think we would call it superhero movie fatigue. I think it really is mostly that people just don't want to watch bad movies. And if we could get, and so maybe then as we look forward to what's coming down the pike, is there enough hope that these things are that the studios will learn their lesson a little bit and they're gonna get better and people are gonna be excited about these again? Or have we hit the sort of the nadir of the superhero genre and it's gonna kind of go the way of the Western?
I'm sure far smarter film enthusiasts and critics might have, more robust thoughts there. I think here's the thing, John. Superhero fatigue, movie general blockbuster fatigue, what have you. Disney live action remake fatigue. Like, what do I want when I go to a movie? I want to be wowed. I want to be surprised. I want to be kind of transported. I
Mhm.
want to buy into the magic trick. Like,
Yeah.
I'm smart enough and old enough to know it's still a magic trick, but
Right.
you can still get me, like, if you know what you're
Sure,
doing.
sure.
And
Right.
so
I'm willing to be gotten, right?
yes, yes. I will join the gotten ones, which is why the insertion about Dune a few minutes ago was so meaningful. Was like, that
Right.
was a moment, that was a film going experience of like, holy cow, okay, yeah, here we are, surprise, awed, wowed, inspired,
Yeah.
even. And so
Because it's not blockbuster fatigue, right?
no,
Because Top Gun Maverick was huge and everybody
it was
loved it
great.
and it was a great movie.
I mean, Quiet
Like,
Place speaks to this. Like, I'm excited for that
sure.
one, and but I think to your question of the superhero fatigue, like, it's hard to extract those things from each other. But I think I I don't think we're at here's a comment. I'm not sure we're at the bottom. Um,
Oh no.
but I think we're close. Which isn't me passing judgment on any one particular property on the horizon. I don't mean that, but as in just like, I think we're out of the free fall, perhaps.
Mhm.
And I'm interested and optimistic enough about Deadpool Wolverine, of course, to give that a chance. I'll see that in the theater. Glancing at the Phase 5 slate here, I am nervous about Brave New World, the Cap flick. I'm nervous about the fact that no one seems to want to stick around the Thunderbolts from a casting standpoint.
That's too bad because Thunderbolts is such a great concept and we have a kind of a cool slate of characters
Sure.
to slot into that concept.
Yeah. But I think here's I'll frame it this way: is my vocation these days is in sales, and I train other sales folk, and I try to encourage them, like, hey, the consumers aren't stupid. Like, don't treat them like they're stupid. Like,
Right.
respect their intelligence, be people of integrity as you go about this sort of sales thing you're doing. But that's what I'd kind of say here is like, don't pretend like we're stupid,
Mhm.
because there's a difference between 10 years ago and the ramshackle, is it gonna work, is it not gonna work, delirium of a Robert Downey Jr. suiting up. We are past that, sadly,
Mhm.
but I still want to believe a man can fly or a woman, and am willing to kind of keep coming back. I
Yeah.
just need the, you know yeah, I just want for, don't treat me like I'm stupid. Show me
Right.
something I
Well,
haven't seen before.
apropos of that very reference of believe a man can fly, I've heard that James Gunn's Superman Legacy is going to be the hype is it's 100% practical that they're not going to use.
It would surprise me if it's 100%, but if even it's 90%, then I'm on board. If
Yeah.
even it's 80%, I'm on board. I do think what that film has going for it, and I could be totally off base, but I actually think they've dropped the legacy. I think it might just be Superman now. But again, I don't keep up
Oh,
with it
okay.
on a microscopic level. But I mean, Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane is fantastic casting.
She's
Like,
great.
that's
Yep.
inspired. I am willing to give Gunn the benefit of the doubt. He has, although I am not a fan, I'll be honest, of his DC work. Um, not from a storytelling perspective, just from a like,
What else has he done in
Suicide
DC?
Squad and Peacemaker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. They're just a little too.
I haven't. I didn't actually see his Suicide Squad movie because the first one was
Oh,
so
first one's awful. Yeah,
horrendous
yeah,
that I
yeah.
didn't even bother.
The Gun Suicide Squad was a COVID release, and so I'm willing to give things a chance if I'm not having to work too hard to see them. And hear me, they're actually, like, I wouldn't take away from people who are fans of it, because I do think they're solidly
Mhm.
made. But what Marvel did that benefited James Gunn is put some guardrails on his worst tendencies, which is just the profanities and the raciness of it all.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So I kind of don't love that about his. But again, Superman isn't really prone to that. Let's
Right.
hope, you know.
Ooh.
But yeah, he's. I'm hopeful there. I'm optimistic there.
And that's actually where I wanted to get to, is sort of a look into the future of the DC stuff with James Gunn sort of at the helm as the sort of the showrunner, if you
Sure.
will.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more reason for hope in that enterprise than there ever was with Zack Snyder
Oh, for
at
sure.
the forefront
Yeah.
of it. Um,
Well, DC has needed a Feige for a long time.
yeah.
And, I though I didn't grow up with as a DC fan the way I did Marvel, like I am just generally, like I've said multiple times now, fan of genre, fan of superhero storytelling, so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. And I like what Gunn has done with the Guardian, so I'm willing to give pretty much all of that an open heart. But yeah, I mean, they had needed a figurehead, a creative figurehead to shepherd things, and who knows, they may have some good things coming because of him.
So I've been looking for a place to put this comment in throughout the episode, and I've sort of haven't been thinking of it in the right time, but we're almost here at the end, and I wanted to get it in. Just that the whole conversation about superhero fatigue has actually been going on for a long time.
Oh, sure, yeah.
At this point, because I was I picked up at the library a bunch of Moon Knight comics.
Sure. Yeah.
And in Jeff Lemire's run from 2014,
Mm-hmm.
there was a sort of very meta conversation between Moon Knight and one of his supporting characters about superhero movie fatigue.
Sure.
In 2014.
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
So,
anytime a genre kind of grows to behemoth size, like the superhero genre did, thanks to Iron Man, we're always going to start forecasting the end before maybe we've kind of earned it. I don't know if you wanted to comment on this, but though the future seems bright, the future seems cautiously bright with Gunn at the DC helm. So you've seen the Marvels?
I have.
Okay. So
I didn't hate it.
No.
I liked it better than Captain Marvel.
Yes, I will agree with that. I think, humorously, I think in my Letterboxd note, I just said all Marvel needed was to get on base, and this movie gets them on base. It's like, do not aim for a grand slam.
But it was still, it still didn't do well.
Oh yeah,
at the box office, right?
But I think still that is, if I'm being kind of maybe more cynical than I should, I think some of that is just not good faith sort of engagement there. But you are right, it did not do great from a box office standpoint. But what I'm getting to is, in this thread of what is their cause to look forward to, I am nervous currently, like I said, about the Cap film, the Thunderbolts film. But in this note of surprise me, give me something to get excited about, like, when, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the Marvels, the pre-credits tag of Kate Bishop showing up, coming home with Lucky, and Kamala being there, I was like, that I'm in on. Let's do that.
Give me Young Avengers.
And it's
Young Avengers is so good.
Yes, it's, to me though my only note there is, it's not even literally about Young Avengers. It's, I didn't see this coming. I didn't know you were going to do this in this movie. Like, these two actors I love, in the roles they're in. Yes, let's launch into that. Let's do something here and do it quick, because that looks exciting. So yeah, that to me gives me some cause for excitement.
All right. Well, I think it's good to end it on a high note.
Sure.
We have some cautious optimism.
Yes.
It's not necessarily all doom and gloom,
no.
Even though it has not been good for a while. Maybe we're out of the doldrums and we're sailing
Emphasis
on
to
perhaps we're sailing on to more friendly shores.
Sure.
And as we like to do, we're gonna round this episode out with a piece of guaranteed good news. What's the thing that you have?
In the spirit of kind of what am I plugged into, what kind of has gotten kind of enkindled my spirit lately, as weird as it sounds, a few months ago, I had thought to do this for a number of years, and finally kind of caved to some peer pressure in the best way possible, and worked a local election,
Yeah.
and it kind of let me put some of my personal feelings to good use. And on top of that, when it comes to addressing the good news you're after here, like, you're a conscientious, smart adult living in the world right now. Like, to be in community is hard to do. And I don't even mean the taxing nature of being in community. I mean, to exist in it at all is hard to come by
Right.
these
To
days.
even get a community
Yes,
is hard,
yes.
for sure.
And so there was something truly, as maybe weird as it might sound to someone that didn't experience it the way I did, there was something life-giving about just being in a place, and where the precinct I worked was literally outside my neighborhood, and I'm meeting neighbors, like literal actual neighbors from my neighborhood, people I've lived in this house 6 years and who I've never met, and like just greeting them and putting faces to names and learning names. Anyway, it was very life-giving in a way that I did not anticipate, and am very excited to continue doing. So anyway, I know that might not exactly be in the spirit of what you're after, but it's my interpretation of the question. Yeah.
That, honestly, that works for me. I
Good.
love that. And I think that is an exhortation that we can all use, is like, be in your community.
Yep.
Like,
yes.
That's it's, and as people of faith, this is something that I talk about a lot, is like, what does it mean to be part of the body of Christ? Like, what is, like, church is not for the purpose of hearing a sermon.
Sure.
Church is for the purpose of being in community with our brothers and sisters, and like finding ways to minister to each other. Like, if you're a hand, but you're just like, the hand is just sitting at home. It's not doing a lot of good.
Sure.
If you're a nose and your jaw and your gift is to sort of sniff out what's going awry with other people, if you're just stuck at home, then you're not doing any good either.
Sure.
And if you just come and sit in the pew and listen to the sermon and then leave, you're also not doing any good either.
Yeah.
And so, be in community, be the body, minister to the people who are around you. Yes, that is part of the good news that we don't, I think we don't get enough of. And so, yep, that works. That functions very, very aptly.
Good.
As a piece of good news for us to leave on. Oh, Nathan, thank you so much. I know you just got off another recording session, and it's getting towards the end. And honestly, I was I was thinking back to when we did the Daredevil episode, and it was a pretty punchy and irrepressible version of Nathan on that show, and so I was kind of ready for that. But this was great. It's always a blast. I appreciate you so much, and and I'm looking forward. I hope sometime in not too distant future I can get you and Reed together, and we can talk about the New Mutants, because that'll be an interesting conversation.
Well,
you
just name dropped, and one thing I failed to mention in the book, the primary subject of our conversation here, is Brother Daredevil Born Again is on the horizon, and your boy could not be more excited. This is
there you go.
Kind of Ninja Daredevil that came out, was featured in a run. I can't remember who the writer was off the top of my head, but in the last year or so. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Even with all the retooling they're doing, to me, it's hopefully a sign that they know they need to fix some stuff. But anyway, I could easily jump back into it. Maybe that's it, John. We can talk about New Mutants if you want, but bring me on board to let's talk about Born Again come time.
We'll do Daredevil. Sold.
Yes.
Sold.
Yes.
We'll do that.
Well,
definitely.
Thank you for having me on. And to any of your listeners who are into the horror stuff, come find us at The Fear of God, thefearofgodpodcast.com. is a good place to look, and we'd love to have you.
So I have, and we can, we'll leave this in at the end here. I've really avoided horror movies most of the time,
Sure.
and I've realized that I can hang with like the comedy horror.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like I watched Megan
Okay. Yeah. That's fun.
because I knew that, because it was on one of my streamers,
Yep.
and I knew you guys were going to talk about it, and I was like, I'll give this a shot.
Yeah.
I think
light
maybe
enough.
this will be okay.
Yeah.
So like Megan was fine. Like Violent Night was a blast.
That's fun. Yeah, that's a fun one.
And so when it's like the fun, like cartoonish
Sure.
gore and violence,
Yeah.
and that, like, I can hang with that.
Yes.
Like, I'm still not here for, like, you know, I'm not gonna go see something like Immaculate. Like, because that just seems just
dark.
not for me on like multiple levels.
Sure.
And that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm trying to broaden the horizons at least a little bit.
Well, that's all good, man. Well, thank you for having me, and good luck to you.
Yep. All right. Thanks again, and we will see you another time. And thank you, all of you guys, for listening. And you can catch us on Threads, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook at 2geeksoup. Send me an email, 2geeksoup@gmail.com. Please write a rating and a review for us on Apple Podcasts. And even though it may make me the aging hippie art teacher, this podcast is a proud member of the More Than One Lesson faculty.